I thank all of you to be here in this after lunch session. Is a little difficult. So thank EFY, Ms. Shavani, for giving me the opportunity to present before you a small talk on ROHS. ROHS, most of us know some of the things which I speak may be already familiar to you. I hope it will be useful to you. Yeah, these are some of the agendas: global scenario, SGS, scope, ROHS. I will be speaking more on EU ROHS, because all other ROHS seems to be based on EU ROHS, some of the obligations, and I suppose some of my other colleagues may be talking in more detail about some of the points, comparisons between ROHS 1 and ROHS 2, but I will be covering the general points would be covered by me. Yeah, a little bit about SGS. SGS is a global company, 75,000 employees, 1,500 offices, operating all over the world, America, Europe, Asia Pacific, Africa. Yeah, we have 10 different business verticals: consumer testing, agriculture, minerals, environmental, OTC, oil gas, automotive, life sciences, systems and certification. These are the governments. I belong to Consumer Products Division. Yeah, when you talk about ROHS, there are various ROHS, even more may be there. I have covered most of the things. California has ROHS regulations regarding recycle verification. So what happens is that ROHS has come as a part of either pollution control as in China, or it has come as electronic waste management as in California, Europe, etc. Or it may be restriction of harmful chemicals in the electronic industry. This is how the ROHS regulations have come into place in different countries. California is having for electronic TV products which are having more than diagonally 4 inches, it is having regulations in place for restriction. China ROHS is covering many topics. It is covering several products which are not covered by Europe. There are some differences between China ROHS and European ROHS. Then there is Turkey for electronic waste. New Jersey is also having Ukraine, Serbia, Vietnam, Korea, Japan, several other countries. Yeah, there are some differences. China ROHS, because China being one of the biggest nations, some differences are placed here. It has excluded certain goods like washing machines, clothes dryers, refrigerator, etc. These are some of the differences between China and European ROHS. And certain things which are excluded from European is included in China, like medical devices, monitoring instruments, etc. And basically a little bit more about China ROHS in the sense that it requires notification of substances if they are present, where are they present exactly. If they are not present, then it can have a recyclability label. China, Japan, Korea, that means it is not restricting the use of these chemicals in the product manufacturing, but it requires extensive testing in the sense that these regulations require disclosure of the content of these ROHS chemicals, where they are present, in which particular part it is present, and how much is present. These kind of declarations are required. Whereas if you compare with European and California, they enforce restriction of manufacture during the manufacture. Again, UK has some differences in the sense that it would be requiring that even chromium finishes with a 0.1 micrometer thickness is considered as a separate homogeneous material, which may not be the same in other countries. India has also come up with an ROHS law. This is called as Rule 2011. It is applicable to India from May 12, 2013. This ROHS law will be applicable, will come into effect in India. It will affect the entire supply chain from waste, product dismantlers and recyclers, reprocessors, and this is totally based on EU ROHS directive. There are slight differences also, and the restriction is applied to the same 6 hazardous chemicals which are enforced in the European ROHS. The same restrictions are applicable in India also. This is the website. The categories of equipments covered under the Indian ROHS are mostly consumer goods and information technology equipments like central processing units, computers, personal computers, notebook computers, printers, copying machines, then typewriters, telex machines, telephones, washing machines, refrigerators, these kind of things. I will be speaking, as I said, more in detail about EU RHS because that forms the model in which the other regulations have been cast. EU RHS, it is known as recast. Earlier it was known as EU RHS 1 from January 3rd January 2013. RHS 1 has been repealed and replaced by RHS 2. The earlier version, the major difference is that the earlier version was dependent on majorly as a primary function, electrical or electromagnetic field as a primary function. The recast version, the new one, the 2.1, it says that it can be dependent on electromagnetic or electrical fields for at least one of its functions. That means many products which were earlier not considered under or out of scope of RHS 1 has now into scope of RHS 2. So that becomes a major difference. This directive is 2011-65 EU. Publishing date is 1st July 2011. Effective is from 21st July 2011. And it is transposed into a national law in 2nd January. That means 2013, January 3, 2013 onwards, any product which is sold in the European market has to follow the compliance of RHS 2. The product categories are 11 product categories. Large household appliances, can be washing machines, dryers, etc. Small household machines like mixer grinder, IT equipments, consumer products equipment, maybe radios, cameras, lighting equipment, electrical and electronic tools, drills, etc. Toys, leisure, sports equipment, maybe walkers and things like that. Automatic dispensers. Now, medical devices, monitoring devices and control instruments, and certain other products, they have been given on the slight, effective date has been postponed slightly due to various purposes, due to the committee meetings, decisions taken. The timelines and exemptions when we talk about, for medical devices till 22nd July 2014, in vitro medical devices the scope is 22 July 2016, and active implantable medical devices have been exempted so far. Maybe the reason may be that high changes will result in, because they are all life-saving machineries. So a lot of R&D will be required to ensure that any changes will not affect their effective functioning. Then category monitoring and control instruments belong to category 9. They are having a date of 22nd July 2014. Then industrial monitoring and control instruments is having 22nd July 2017. And other category which are not covered by above will be 2019. The major exemptions from these directives are large vehicles, large installations, whether mobile or stable installations like maybe vehicles, cars, space equipments, PV, military equipment, defense equipments are specifically which is taken out of this scope. Then photovoltaic installations, implanted medical devices, and then consumer transport like maybe a lift or goods transport, drives, etc. These have been, some of these have been not included in the scope of RHS 2. When you talk about the chemicals which are involved and the concentrations, this involves restricted hazardous substances of 4 heavy metals and 2 lists of organic compounds like PBs, lead, Gs, mercury, chromium-6 and cadmium. These are the 4 heavy metals which are found to be highly poisonous, as we are well aware. And PBBs and PBDs, polyprobenated biphenyls and diphenyl ethers. These are a category of compounds organic. Under PBB there are 14-15 chemicals are the same under PBDs. These are traditionally used as to prevent the flammability and flame retardant products. And the limits given for lead, mercury, chromium-6, polyprobenated biphenyls and diphenyl ethers is 1000 ppm or 0.1%, and for cadmium, which is found to be more toxic, 100 ppm. And one very important standard or rule to be followed in RHS is that the testing has to be carried out in homogeneous materials. What does it mean? Homogeneous materials. That means it doesn't mean that entire, for example, a TV or a mobile phone should be RHS compliant. It says that each and every unscrewable part or each and every part of that particular product has to be separated. That means a mobile, maybe it is having more than 50 parts. So all the 50 parts has to be separately taken out each of them has to be compliant with the above norms. That if in any other part, for example, if you have a cable with which is having a plastic coating with a metal part inside, the metal part and the plastic coating has to be separated. So in this way, separation to the lowest possible level by crushing or grinding or unscrewing or any other processes, whatever level you can go down, maximum level, it has to be gone down, and then it has to be tested, and each and every part has to be compliant. So though it looks very simple from point of view that only 6 chemicals and the limits are very small, but actual RHS compliant testing for a final product, it becomes a bit difficult because it is very complex because of this homogeneous criteria which is involved. And there are for the future restrictions. Right now it is not applicable, but this is in the discussion stages. For the future, maybe from 2014 onwards, the committee decisions will be taken. Another flame retardant like HBCT and phthalates like diethylhexyl phthalate, benzyl butyl phthalate, dibutyl phthalate. These are some of the things. And some of these materials have been taken from the REACH regulation. It is also a regulation in Europe affecting all the consumer goods as well as chemicals. Now, when you talk about testing methods in short, several companies which are big companies, they have something which is known as X-ray machine in place. X-ray helps you to have X-ray diffraction helps you to have a very quick screening of heavy metals or elements. Then this is followed by they follow the practice of X-ray diffraction followed by the detailed method. But there are certain errors also possible in that, in the sense that sometimes false positives or false negatives may be possible. In case of even brominated compound, bromine may be detected, which may not be actually coming from polybrominated biphenyls or diphenyl ethers. It may be from some other compound which may be part of it. So this way it is not 100% accurate. It is only a qualitative testing. Followed by the accepted method by any committee would not be an X-ray diffraction method, but actually it would be a very detailed, accurate chemical analysis followed by digestion and using the spectrometric instruments like ICP-MS or GC-MS. This will be the one which will be accepted to the European community. So lead limit is 1000 ppm. This follows the method of wet chemical digestion followed by ICP-AAS. Cadmium 100 ppm, again wet chemical digestion. When you say wet chemical digestion, generally it is like dissolving it in strong acids. It is broken down into parts and digested in certain chemicals, and then it is followed, particular part is extracted and then subjected to the different tests. What are the EU obligations in the supply chain? The manufacturers' obligations are speaking in more detail because most of us may be suppliers, manufacturers who are supplying to European countries. Manufacturers will need to provide the member states on request with all the documentation to demonstrate EE conformity in a language that is easily understood. That means it is made in China. It is going to be finally sold in Europe. So it should not be, the leaflet should not be only in Chinese, it should be in English also so that authority can understand it. Whenever there is a request from authority, in fact it may be from an authority, it may be from a competitor, or it may be from an NGO, anybody may ask for any compliance documentations, and the documentation may need to be provided. And in case of any non-compliant product coming into picture, immediate action is to be taken for withdrawal, as well as it needs to keep the distributors informed so that the general public also come to know and they can take a corrective action. And this non-product compliance should be informed to member states also, where the EE was sold, giving the examples and details of non-compliance and what are the corrective actions taken. And for compliant products, CE mark is a mandatory. This shows the consumer that product is meeting the norms. The CE marks allows, before the CE mark for RHS came into picture, every country used to have a different norm. Different supplier used to use different marks. Some used to use PB with a cross across. Somebody used to say RHS in a circle. So different marks used to be applied by the same. But from 2nd January 2013, there is only one mark to indicate RHS compliant for electronic and electrical goods, that is CE mark. It allows the companies to sell in any of the 30 countries without making any modifications for each member states. The minimum required compliant markings are serial number, manufacturer's name or trademark, address. These are required either on the product if possible, or it should be required in the packaging or a documentation, etc. If it is, if you are a manufacturer of maybe a cable and you are supplying to industry which is a TV, so then you need not put it in the cable because cable comes as a part of the TV. So probably the final product manufacturer would use a CE mark on his product. But otherwise, if you are making some final product which is reaching the consumer, then CE mark is definitely required on the product. EU RHS enforcement guidance have been given. It states that there has to be a technical file prepared at the manufacturer's end, and that should also contain conformity risk assessment. If the technical file does not require test report for certain parts, it should be explained why the test reports are, why it is exempted, why the testing has not been carried out. It also has to show various internal production controls to manage the compliance. It has to have supplier warranties or test certificates declaring the use of substances within permitted limits. And supply completed declaration for each part and justification of use of exemptions. And manufacturers' assessment of suppliers, whether they can be trusted, whether they are grey market suppliers or they can be authorized suppliers, whether they can be trusted or not. So manufacturer's assessment also is required. The manufacturer has to assess the RHS report depending on whether the part contains high-risk materials, whether any good chance is there that some of these chemicals may be present in that, whether the supplier has its systems in place, whether it is an ISO certified company, whether he has a quality system in place, and test report has been carried out, most importantly, on homogeneous materials or in parts. If you take it together, if you do not follow the homogeneous rule, if you take several components together, the results would vary. And manufacturers' own or suppliers' own external or internal test reports. This is a guidance given by UK for supplier qualification. Suppliers can be divided into three types: type A, type B, type C. The type A supplier, he has very good understanding of RHS, comprehensive systems in place for compliance, and carries out selective analysis. It may not be possible and viable to carry out 100% testing. So carries out the selective analysis of high risk components and materials. So such a supplier, it is advised that you can accept all the supplier's declarations without further testing. Type B supplier. Type B supplier has a good understanding of RHS and has a system of RHS compliance in place, but he has some lacks in the sense that he does not identify high-risk materials and carry out the selective testing, etc. In such a case, you have to ask for recent reports to ensure the compliance so that your risk is minimized. Type C supplier is the lowest category. He does not understand the RHS requirements, he does not have a system in place, in which case all risk, there would be much higher level of testing and test reports of current test report would be required. In addition to any random audits, random sampling, etc. would be required at this particular kind of supplier set. That means this is a very high risk supplier. Again, if we talk about some high risk materials, for example, lead soldier used inside the components, or film circuits may have cadmium, PVC and can have cadmium and lead used as stabilizer and current. Metal enclosures can have chromate finish. Then wiring boards also can have lead. Buttons may have mercury. Switches and relays also may have mercury. Polystyrene, acrylonitrile, butadiene, ABS may be having a flame retardant. Colored plastics like red, orange, yellow can have cadmium, lead, chromium 6, etc. So these are some of the highest materials. Of course, this is not totally covered. It may be more. So when you talk about the supply chain obligations, we have covered the manufacturer's obligations in more detail. For the entire supply chain, whether it is a manufacturer, importer or distributor, are having very clearly defined obligations, and each have to support each other. The manufacturer, the importer and distributor have to work as a team to support each other to ensure that obligations are carried out, because there is a high risk for each of them in case of failures. The obligations, when you talk about in more detail, the manufacturer has the obligation of design and manufacture electronic and electrical goods which are fulfilling the restriction requirement. That means he should not use materials which are having the restricted substances above limits. Importer distributor has no obligation in this regard. And placing the RHS compliant EE on the market, that is, importer has obligation. He has to ensure that he is placing only compliant products in the market. Distributor has to verify it is done. And manufacturer has to drop the technical documentation, whatever is required, internal production control, conformity report, manufacturer's assessment, all these kind of supplier assessment, all the things he has to prepare a very big technical file. Importer has to verify it is done. And declaration of conformity has to be made by the manufacturer. Importer has to verify it is done. Distributor has to verify it is done. affixing of CE marking on compliant products, manufacturer has to do, importer has to verify, distributor has to verify. Technical documentation has to be kept for 10 years. Even manufacturer and importer are obligated under this. This is required in case of any authority may recall at any time. After it is put in the market, for 10 years the document should be available for any kind of claims and disputes. Ensure conformity in a serial production. It may be that first 2 batches are compliant, the third and fourth the supplier got changed or the material got changed. It should not happen that way. So manufacturer has obligation. Importer has also obligation to check on this. Importer is not required, but manufacturer has obligation for this. Keeping a register of non-compliance of electronic products as well as recalls. Manufacturer importer has to have the documentations for this. Ensure that the CE marking EE bear the batch number, serial number, manufacturer and distributor has to verify. It is done before he sells the goods. Withdraw or recall non-compliant parts. All of them have the obligations. Provide the information and documentation to competent national authorities when they are required to do so. All of them, these documents can be asked from the manufacturer or distributor, or this declaration of conformity is the sole responsibility of the manufacturer. Okay, then it has to clearly identify the particular product. The official who is signing on behalf of this, all these details has to be present in this particular declaration of conformity, which should be present in the technical file as well as in the final product. If the technical file does not require, some of the challenges are that the technical file, if it does not require any test report, why it is not required, this explanation has to be given. Quality assurance test has to be done, whether the report covers relevant number parts, whether it has been carried out from an authorized laboratory or not, whether the homogeneous testing has been carried out at the very smallest level. Okay. And again, the risk is that XRF testing has been carried out. As I said, in case of complaints and delays in disputes, XRF will not be accepted because sometimes RHS non-compliance will be covered by a compliant material which will pass an XRF but it will fail in the final test. I'm going a little fast because of time shortage. So penalties would be very highly severe. So manufacturer has to have the system documentation is very high requirement. Systematic analysis of document preparation as well as testing, validation, all these things are much more in case of manufacturer to achieve the compliance for ROHs. If you talk about the summary in conclusion, let us just sum it up. So what a company needs to do is you have to have first of all management approval for some man and materials, development of a corporate roadmap with the ROHS compliance team, study the bill of materials and reviewed for ROHS compliance, assess the materials for risk, assess the suppliers for risk, and maintain a very strong ROHS compliant inventory management process. Random screening testing programs should be in process. Data management system should be very strong because you have to maintain these files for 10 years. So you should be able to recollect from which particular 10 years back, which part you have purchased, from which supplier it has been used in which product. So very strong data management and review system has to be there. Again, if non-compliant products are replaced by compliant materials, they have to meet the further quality requirements because they should not have whiskering or any other functional properties. This also has to be there. And if company has several locations, then all things have to be reproduced at all locations. These are some of the approaches. If enforcement is the defense is the burden of proof is on the industry. There is no way other persons will take the burden. The burden will be put on the industry. Industry has to show that it took all the reasonable steps and exercised all due diligence. That is by showing the technical files and risk assessment reports and audits of the suppliers, and a lot of things are there. So all these things help the due diligence. It should be able to show that it has identified the risk at every stage. It has a system of checks in place, and the company would be given several days to submit the technical documentation showing the product of compliance. Some of the examples where failures has taken place, for example, Sony during a Christmas time it has released a PlayStation. Unfortunately, somebody has opened that and taken out some cable and checked it for some products, and it was found that one cable having a plastic material of the cable, metal part near the plastic cable covering was found to have cadmium. It led to high level of loss during the Christmas sales for Sony. Then there was another Caracquay tape recorder sold at Walmart stores. Control buttons were found to have high level of lead. Another coffee maker. This is applicable even nowadays. We are drinking all of us are drinking coffee from the coffee makers, etc. the percolators are being alloyed. So during hot coffee or hot tea, it has a tendency to leach the lead. So this is also found to have. These are some of the examples. Many more are there, which may not be more public. So what does SGS do? SGS helps you to have the testing compliance to the test by view of testing your products or your factory verification, or we will help you to put the system in place or carry out the audits. We support you in preparation of all the technical files. And in case of in front of European Custom Agency, we will help you to have a system in place which is acceptable as per European norms. So you can partner with us for REACH, ROSH compliance, etc. Technical contact, any technical queries can be directed to me, and for business contact, my colleague will be there. Thank you for your time.